All right, everybody, welcome back to East Oaks for another Painting from Life. I think this is session 14 or 15. So Alex and I are back with you again. We have the lovely Jessica that is modeling for us this evening, and we're super excited. We have, as usual, we have the photos available, the reference images. If you go to eastoaksstudio.com and you submit your email, you have access not only to the images for today, but you'll have access to the entire backlog of reference images for all the Painting from Lives in case you ever want to paint along from those as well. We look forward to all of our people from around the world. Feel free to give us any questions. This is our time to be able to communicate with y'all while we paint along and have a fun time. So also, there's just a bit of an unscheduled thing outside our window. There might be a little bit of noise pollution today because we have a leaf blower that's about to go off in a little bit, but it shouldn't last too long. And that is part of the beauty of live streaming. You never know what the neighbors might be doing. So, but without further ado, we're going to get started. And as always, I'm running slightly behind. So I'm just going to do a few checkups. So the cameras are going to go out on Alex as he sets up. Please tell us where you're coming from, where you're tuning in from, and we'll get started. All right? Awesome.
Someone should set a timer.
Okay, I'll set one.
Thank you.
You heard me through Alex's mic.
So it's usually 20 minutes, then 5-minute break.
Okay.
On and off like that.
So we have people joining from Colombia, New York, Canada, Long Island, Texas, Brazil, and Dominican Republic.
So today something I'm trying slightly different is just to draw with pencil directly on the canvas first. Something I always feel a little bit more freer drawing with a pencil, so I just wanted to try it out.
So one of the things that we love about Painting from Life is this is our opportunity to experiment, try new things. So, and that's the beauty of being an artist. You don't want to get, no artist enjoys being sort of doing the same thing over and over again. So we're always trying new things, see if we can figure out something else that seems to work with our system or might help us. And so today I'm deciding I'm going to try just a little bit more of a limited palette. I'm not using all of my colors. And there's this Naples yellow that I recently got that I've never tried. It was a Michael Harding Naples yellow, so I thought I'd give it a go, see if I like it. You know, always go with my sienna yellow. Use that a decent amount. So I'm going to just try a few things on the limited color palette. Love this beautiful red flowing hair that we get to paint today. That's pretty awesome. Another thing I'm going to be experimenting with today is I'm just going to be like using is really broad brushes for a while, see how far I can go with them, you know. So easy to get caught up in the middle of using tiny brushes because you think they give you this illusion of control. Sometimes you create more beautiful mark making when you use a larger brush.
So Benjamin Lester asks, as more people get the vaccine, do you have a goal date to reopen in-person classes?
Good question. We actually don't do a whole lot of in-person classes. I do want to do a few workshops in person, and I will probably try to schedule a few after a while. But yeah, I basically will wait till probably sometime in like June, July to start figuring that out, to see what's happening in the world, you know, what people are comfortable with. But that's a great question. I think that eventually we will. But for the most part, we live in East Oak Studio isn't really huge, so there's just limited capacity of how many people can fit in here anyway. So we'll probably do, if we do some workshops, it'll be smaller, and then we tend to nurture more of like the next generation of artists, and we only do a couple of artists at any given time. So so with that being said, I think it might be a bit before we have any openings available for new artists, where the artists that are here right now kind of a bit at capacity. So that's why we do video, so that more people have access to us. You know, we always say what we could do for, wish we could do for many, we do for a few. That's a great question, though.
Nick Nicometti says, thanks East Oak's first live stream I'm watching.
Welcome, Nick. Make sure if you have any questions or thoughts, we're happy to answer them for you. If you find this helpful, you know, we'd love for you to continue joining us, and if you want and find it enjoyable, you can click the subscribe button and the bell button, and it'll let you know every time we do it. All right. So everybody, let us know what you're doing in the world. If y'all gotten out and about, y'all still bunkered down in your house. You know, different countries are opening up. Some places are, some places aren't. Be cool to see what's going on in the world. It's funny, it's just one of those days where I always feel like when I'm getting ready to film a painting from life, I'm always living on borrowed time, and I always think I start early enough, and then you get close to the end, you're like, oh my gosh, I have no time left. story of my life. But we are up and running, and it makes me happy. Always makes me excited when I start seeing like people joining, because I'm like, okay, everything's working. Good to hear from you. Sarah Brown has been one of our really loyal followers. So a couple of things with the limited palette. A limited palette can force you easily, in a way, to actually create color harmony without trying too hard. If you find a good, it's kind of like you're finding a couple of chords, 3 or 4 notes in a chord, and making sure that those notes are sort of harmonizing colors, then you can actually create like really beautiful, really beautiful music. It's kind of like picking a scale in music, but it's only just a few chorded notes probably versus like an entire scale. So it allows for you to be a little bit more focused, and for like shorter bursts of time, like these like 3-hour sessions are, I think that it actually adds a lot of freedom, so, or at least that's the hope. We'll see if it does. A couple of the other advantages is it's like, you can make it a very affordable palette. You don't have to get like a gajillion colors. You can spend a lot of money on a whole lot of colors and then realize that you could have accomplished the same thing with a smaller palette. I find it easier. People make better decisions sometimes when they only have a few blues to choose from, or a few yellows, or a few reds. That's a great question. Alex, you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I agree with all of that, and also, if you're someone who has a lot of colors on their palette, like I feel like I do, like at least like 15, then whenever you want to do something quick, or like go plein air painting or something, it's just so much easier to put out like 5 colors instead of 15, especially when you want to do something kind of quick. And I usually end up getting the exact same, like almost exactly the same color harmony. It's funny. It shows you how much you like don't need. But convenience is like a big thing. If it takes me forever to like set up, I know if I'm gonna go plein air painting and it's just gonna be so hard and long to set up, I'll probably be less likely to go. So it's awesome for that.
It's true.
Someone asks, could you tell us what is on your limited palette?
Well, just decided I'd use like 2 yellows. Sometimes, honestly, you could limit it down to 1. I could have just done sienna, but I decided I would like a bright chromatic yellow, So, and I haven't used this color a lot. This is a Naples yellow made by Michael Harding. And so I wanted to give it a shot. Typically my yellows tend to be a bit more cool that are in that higher value range. So wanted to go shift a bit more warm. And then this is raw sienna, and that's typically what's on my palette, and that is made by I think Michael Harding as well. And I've got a cobalt blue, and I'm using alizarin crimson, which are typical colors I use. And if I find that I need a really warm red, I did add, which is very typical to like the Zorn palette, I added a vermilion red, or equivalent would be a cadmium red. So Alex, what red do you use for that equivalent?
Oh yeah, a Chinese vermilion. from Sennelier.
There you go.
Or just yeah, that's what I've been using lately. But what's on my palette right now is ultramarine blue. This color called Asphaltum by like Rembrandt is the company. And it's basically just like it's just like a nice rich brown. And then I have transparent oxide red, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, and then like a chrome permanent yellow by Rembrandt, and then white. So that's 6 colors.
So Zoran, we talk a lot about that palette. A lot of old masters use it, but for some reason he gets credited for it. And that typically is like a 5 color palette. Is that right? It's black, white,
I think it's just 4.
black, white,
With white.
vermilion, or some other red similar to vermilion. And the black axis is blue, and then he uses like a raw sienna or a burnt umber, not burnt umber. What's the other color I'm thinking of that's similar to
Yellow
bronze?
ochre?
Yellow ochre, yeah, yellow ochre as his yellow. So basically, I have exactly that. Just I have 2 different blues, or a blue, versus using black.
With a drawing. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not actually starting with a drawing right now, so there you go. That's what I think about that. I'm starting with, I typically start by painting a drawing in, but today I thought it'd be fun to actually practice not doing that. And I think the more important question is can you draw? Because the way we see drawing is not necessarily just the act of like putting pencil marks or some sort of, charcoal-y black and white thing on a page, but are you able to create structure, find proportion, and relate the shapes to each other? So when we talk about drawing, that's what we're typically talking about. So all that to be said is that, like, are you capable of doing that, And if you can do that with a pencil, then you can do it with a brush. And it's all a matter of knowing your shapes. So as long as you can draw with a brush at any stage of a painting, and there's many stages you should be drawing with a brush. So Jessica's doing a fantastic job. How much time do we have left on this first session?
We have 3 minutes left.
Okay. 3 minutes.
Nick says painting is drawing with color.
Certainly can be. Too many people get caught up with just color and they forget about the drawing because the color's like the fun thing. It's kind of like the distraction. It's like the cool looking thing that like makes your painting, but drawing is the thing that's going to actually get you a likeness.
Oscar Bethencourt asks, if a portrait artist wants to achieve transparency effects without using lead white, which would be a good substitute?
Wow, there's so many opportunities on that. I wonder if he wants to know a different white to use to help with transparency. But if you're trying to say without using a white, so that transparency stays important, there's a lot of ways. You can use a medium that's like oleogel or solvent-free gel. It's one that Gamblin makes. There's just a massive amounts of mediums out there. Different oil itself. One of the things that you should probably consider when you're thinking about that, like you can even use silica glass. They make a silica glass, and the old masters used to use that as a glazing technique, and it helps kind of reinforce the integrity of the paint while you're thinning it out. So there's just a lot of different opportunities there. One of the suggestions I'd have is to go to Natural Pigments website and check out all the different forms of mediums and glazing, because they also do a good job of educating you on which one does what and what would be better for a certain scenario.
Nick Nakometi says, this live stream is cool.
Well, we think you're cool, Nick.
And that is a break for the model.
Awesome. Way to go, Jess. Thanks. All right. Everybody, we'll be back in just a bit. Give us a 5-minute break, and so that the model can rest, and we'll be back with you in just a moment. All right, everybody, we're back.
Alex, how are you finding drawing with a pencil?
Drawing around for sure. And as you can see, I just erased my eye sockets because they were in the wrong spot. And I apologize if the noise of the pencil is annoying. I don't know if this sounds good.
Either that is the quietest leaf blower that I have ever heard, or he decided to start on the other side. So, but I'm not complaining, that's for sure. So, audience, for whoever is just starting to follow us, we used to be in a studio that had a wedding venue above us. It was an old warehouse, and people would come for the wedding above us, and there was no insulation or any separation. You could literally see the hardwood floor was our ceiling, which was their floor. And you would have about 60 women in heels going across that sucker, and it sounded like a stampede. And we have been spoiled over here where the sound is not nearly as bad, but we'd be live streaming, and then all of a sudden, like, a wedding that we didn't know would be happening, or a rehearsal dinner would start, and it was nigh impossible for it to come across as sounding good. So I'll put up with the occasional leaf blower.
It was like whenever they were getting ready for a wedding, so they moved all the tables, but they would never lift them up.
Oh, that's right. And
They
they
just
scrape
pushed
them.
them.
Yeah. You would just hear all the way across the floor.
Figurative artist Benjamin Lester says it's the Bob Ross of leaf blowers.
That's awesome.
Exactly. Maybe you scared him, Lewis.
I think I did. Like I told him, I was like, now be as quiet as possible. We're streaming live across the country. Not that you can be really quiet with a leaf blower. And his eyes got like really big, like, oh man, this is going to be bad for you.
Howard Line says, I hope that you all got lots of free cake.
Howard Line, it's good to hear from you, buddy. Glad you're joining us. Howard's got an incredible online tutorial and mentorship company himself, and does a lot on there. Y'all should follow him on his Instagram. I believe his Instagram is Howard Lion, just like his name. But he's an incredible painter and also illustrator. He does like figurative work, but also does a lot of like illustration and kind of fantasy work as well. But go check him out. So glad he's joining us tonight. So
In response to the lead white question before, Oscar says, I use Primalba, but it dries very slowly. I will use lead white. Thanks for your answer.
Awesome, you're welcome. Alex, every now and again. At one point in a season was using Primalba, but now I think uses lead.
Yeah, I usually put them both on my palette, but I've just been, like, last couple paintings, just only using lead. Because sometimes I'll use, like, I don't want to accidentally use Primalba first, because it's like easier to squeeze out, it's cheaper, so I can use more of it and use it for the block-in, and then use a faster drying lead over a slow drying white, because that will like cause cracking over time. So I've been just trying to use just lead, but I do really like Primalba because unlike just regular titanium white, it acts like a lead. It doesn't completely just destroy the color, it tints it just a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, it's more than lead white. I mean, it tints it more than lead white, but definitely not as much as titanium.
Someone says, hey, this is the first time I'm joining in. Can you tell me more about you and your art?
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us. We are East Oak Studio. We're based out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're sort of a small group of artists that all paint together, but also try to give access to good quality instruction from some of the better painters in the world, and so that everyone, no matter where you are, has access to really good quality content. So our goal is to create great artists and great art, and we know that we can't do that for everyone in the world. There's just a few of us, but what we can do is try to create content that would allow for them to more quickly get further along their painting journey. So we have a free YouTube channel that we put free content on like this, as well as a few educational things and interviews. And then we have a subscription service where where you can pay a monthly subscription and you get access to live stream critiques and videos of other artists that we've filmed that are instructional videos. And yeah, our goal is to help the world get to be more beautiful. You know, there's plenty of ugliness in the world, so we're all about beautiful things and trying to push forward beauty. So that's honestly our mission statement. Our mission statement is to restore hope through beauty. But thanks for asking, and we're so happy you're joining us tonight.
Have either of you had any painting discoveries lately in your practice, or new discoveries you found out?
One of the things that I am discovering is that I rediscover things. It's kind of like you'll forget that you did something that you're like, oh, that was really cool that I learned that thing. And then like you get back into old habits, and then like all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that thing, that was really cool. So I feel like I'm always just rediscovering things that kind of like I already knew, but gets reinforced over time. So, and I feel like that's kind of the learning process, right? Is that over time you keep rediscovering things.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I've recently discovered. I mean, I've been recently trying a new medium, which is a natural pigments Rublev medium called Italian varnish. And it's kind of like, they're like most popular one, oleo gel, but it dries faster and it's made with black oil. And I've been liking using that. And then once I actually start painting, I'm gonna try another medium I just bought. The transparent base, fast drying alkyd for underpainting. Which dries pretty opaque, but I want to see how fast it really will dry. And if I can get some cool effects out of it.
Daniela Protopapa, sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Hello from Milan, Italy. Thanks for sharing. Seeing your work live is a great inspiration. A question for you. Do you sometimes have doubts during a painting, or do you always know how to proceed?
I can tell you with this painting I'm working on in the studio now, not this one, but also this one, definitely pretty much always have doubts. And I'm kind of like, especially with this one I'm working on right now in the studio, there's just been times where I'm just staring at it. I'm like, I just do not know what the next step is. Like, I don't know what to do next. And then when that happens, I usually just have to start painting. And eventually I just work my way into figuring out what it is. But yeah, totally.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. Do you sometimes have doubts during a painting, or do you always know how to proceed? Her name is Daniela.
Daniela. Ciao.
Pratapa.
No, I think oftentimes I tell people a lot that painting is about you, no matter what you put up there, it's wrong. And then you've corrected by putting context around whatever it is. And then the context informs the thing you put down first, so then you can correct it. And it becomes this game of pushing things around. So often when you first start, you don't know where, it's almost like hard to know where you should start. And then as you move along in the painting, you find your way a bit more. But oftentimes I think that the difference between somebody who's inexperienced or experienced is how often do you lose your way and not know how to solve it. And you know, people that are even experienced still find to have issue sometimes not being able to find their way back. And it's just knowing when to like quit that painting if you need to in order to, you know, start over. But it's a really great question. I think that people, one of the fallacies that people believe are that artists have it all figured out, like good artists. And really it just means that they're they can solve issues a little faster and know a few more things to how to investigate. But for the most part, it's just as difficult for them. It's a great question.
Kaisha says, greetings from the Asheville area. Thanks for doing these streams, they're great. I'm taking a class with Brad Kunkel right now and absorbing as much as I can from wherever I can.
Well, Brad. But, you know, very respected, really respect Brad's work. And so if you're learning from somebody, he's a great person to learn from. So one thing that I'm doing when I'm blocking in this way is I kind of wait a while before I put the lips in. I tend to like double check and make sure that the shapes above the lips are what I want before I move down. Because it's easy to get proportions wrong otherwise.
Louis, could you just remind everyone how to get the reference image? So that
Yes, studio.com and then go to submit your email, and there should be a place to put your reference image in. And if not, I'll make sure to double check that and make sure that the address is right on the next break.
Emmanuel Godson says love from Ireland from him and his cat Levi.
That's great. Oh, thank you so much for joining us. It's incredible to hear about where everyone is in the world. I have always wanted to visit Ireland. I have yet to go, but maybe sometime in the near future I'll get a chance to after all of this COVID mess is out of our way. But what a beautiful place to live.
Marco Fontolan says, have you ever painted on a traditional wood board prepared with rabbit skin glue on gesso ground?
I have never painted on a traditional wood panel with rabbit skin glue. I've used rabbit skin glue for canvas and painted on like traditional linen, and I've painted on wood, but not with that combination. And not with a traditional wood panel. I've kind of made my own wood panel when I was a student, but that's very different from using the traditional style. If you have questions about that though, Natural Pigments website is a great website and resource to find information about just such a thing.
HY says, what do you think about Russian academic drawing?
Russian drawing and painting is one of my favorite style of paintings. But Alex, I think you were talking about Russian drawings and paintings recently when we were having a combo at the table or something.
Yeah, I after the show I'm working on, I'm gonna be, I want to go literally study with a Russian painter. So yeah, I really like the way they work. It just, I want a little touch of that. So like, seems so efficient to just have the type of, like, the knowledge they have of like the structure of the human body and how fast they can implement it. It's just great. And just the overall aesthetic quality of their work I find really interesting as well.
Me too, man. It's truly some of my favorite style of work out there. I'd probably decently different from my own, but I'm just like Alex in the sense that there's some painters out there that's like, wow, I would love to know more about how they made their decisions and how they apply paint. And so, worth a good study. Okay. All right. Just take a break. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back in about 5 minutes.
Virginia Windsor says, hi Alex, Jenny Windsor here. I am enjoying following you. You have done an amazing job developing your talent.
Jenny?
Yeah, Jenny Windsor.
Yeah, thank you. I've had my Instagram like since high school, so there's some people that have been following me embarrassingly long and seen some bad stuff. I hope that's not you, Jenny.
Christopher says, this is absolutely brilliant. You guys and the comments are asking questions I've been wanting to ask and learn for a while now, so thank you.
Wow, Christopher, thank you. Boy, it brings us a lot of joy to be able to share. When I was a younger artist, I was living in Mississippi, and then, boy, I was painting alone and didn't feel like there's any resources out there, and felt kind of like an island. And I tell you what, it's just really makes me happy to know that I'm able to help maybe contribute to somebody's journey. When once everything's kind of like working and you can just kind of get in the flow.
Marco asks, if you've tried it, Michael Harding produces a color called warm white and says that it is a lead white alternative. Is it really a good substitute? And greetings from Italy.
That would be interesting if the only thing that it is replicating is the fact that lead white is slightly warmer than titanium white. Like if they're just calling it warm white. If it's just like titanium but with some kind of warm pigment mixed in. Have you tried it?
No, I have not. You said his name's Marcos? Marco. Ciao Marco, piacere. It's going to be my new thing with all our Italian friends. Marco, you should tell us where you're from. I lived in Italy for about a year when I was much younger. And it was one of the best years of my life. But no, I can't answer that question because, yet again, I've never tried it, so I don't know if it is or isn't. But I do tell you that Michael Harding really makes quality paint, and whatever he claims, you know, is seems to be true to the paint that he's selling. So worth experimenting.
Email from Rublev Natural Pigments that they created a titanium white that is supposed to act just like a lead white.
Oh, cool.
So
They also make a mixture of a titanium and lead white, don't they?
yeah, like a half and half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, I used to make my own half and half, so just to kind of like save on costs. So that's really awesome to know that they do that.
Marco also asks, what do you think about Lucas Benoni work?
I was in 2017, I was in the still life competition at GCA, Grand Central Atelier in New York City, and he was one of the competitors with me.
Was he really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, he's a super cool guy, and his paintings are great. I think he's really good at like mixing flesh tones and stuff. He seems to be pretty good at like fresh color. So yeah.
Well, there you have it. I know his name, but I follow so many artists that I'll have to look his work back up again and double check on it. And I'll do that on the break.
Peggy D says, hi Alex, we miss you in Virginia Beach.
That's awesome. There was a gallery in Virginia Beach where I basically did like all my first, like was in all of my first shows. and it was called the Artist Gallery. And Peggy was one of the artists there. Maybe
Oh, cool.
maybe she worked there too. I can't remember. But yeah, that's awesome.
Saismon says, is doing master copies a good way to improve your painting skills, or is it killing your creativity and flow? Greetings from Poland.
That's awesome. I think that if you do many master copies of many masters and you're using it to study their techniques and really dive deep into their techniques, you can find sort of truths, and I wouldn't call it secrets, but you most certainly find a technique or hidden tendencies that they might have. And then you get to pick and choose what are your favorite things about them to add into your own work. But it is actually creativity, almost by definition, is taking what other people have done, mixing it up, and then repackaging it with really your own, the residue of your own self on it, and then putting it back out in the world. And so because of that, I think it could be very beneficial to people to work on master copies.
Yeah, I don't think it would kill your creativity at all. I can just imagine if I sat down and actually did a master copy of, you know, anyone I really admired, I would probably learn so much. Because when you're copying something, like, okay, yeah, it looks like a face or whatever, but then you know it's paint, so you have to replicate that paint quality, and like the amount of subtlety and like where they're choosing to like just leave things super, you know, vague, and what they choose to make sharp. You don't really like breathe that in until you have to mix the paint and try it yourself. So I wish I did more. I think it'd make me more creative.
Emmanuel Godson made a comment that his art college destroys talent. So what are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, this could be a bit loaded, but I think that there's, number one, when we're talking about art school, it's a very broad term. There's many different types of art schools out there, and so I'm not really sure which one you're speaking on behalf of, but if you're speaking from a university side, there's something you can learn from everyone. The problem is that a lot of them come with dogma, and you have to be careful to separate the dogma from what you can learn from the school. This is my own opinion, by the way. And so while the one thing you should learn is that you're going to school to basically, as if you were a poet, it's kind of like you're learning vocabulary words and different ways of limiting your abilities so that you can have more versatility in your creativity. The moment that an art school does just the opposite, where it limits your vocabulary because it's saying that all the other words are not worth learning because they don't make art, then it can hinder your creativity. And there are a lot of schools that believe in just that, you know. And so that would be where I kind of draw the line, so to speak. So every school you can learn something from, but keeping it sort of mentally compartmentalized to realize that it also has the ability to make you overly critical of some of your own giftings. And And so to make sure you recognize the vocabulary you've already learned from who you are by nature is important. Alex, you want to throw out anything there?
Yeah, just if you're going to a school and you don't know if the teachers can paint, it's a bad idea. Just go somewhere where where you like the teachers' work to the point where you want to learn from them. If that doesn't exist or it's so secretive, then get out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So Vaporwave says, where is the most beautiful places you have painted and how is everyone?
What's up, Vaporwave? Beautiful, most beautiful places. Well, I painted in, I did a tiny little painting in Iceland, and that was beautiful. And then I did plein air painting in Australia, and that was amazing. So I would say, yeah, there.
Yeah, that sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Probably Venice is my most beautiful place. I also will say the Grand Canyon. I hiked the Grand Canyon. And now it's been about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe even 8. And I went with my brother and I took watercolors out there, and I hiked up to this place called Ribbon Falls, which is this beautiful little waterfall that's way remote in sort of the crevices of the Grand Canyon. And my brother and our other friends went out and did like day hikes in a couple of places, and I went by myself and went to Ribbon Falls, and the colors were just incredible. And it was so tranquil, and yeah, it was absolutely gorgeous. And I stayed there all day painting, and because it was watercolor, I had plenty of water. So I just like scooped up some of the water of the Grand Canyon, which made the watercolors even more cool in a way, because it was like made with the medium of the area. And won't ever forget it. It's a great question. I don't think we've ever been asked that.
Vaporwave says, is it just me who keeps a lot of old glass jars full of dirty brushes on the side, or does anyone else do this?
Well, my old glass jars are a painting roller tray. And my brushes just live in it until I'm ready to use them again. They just sit in oil. So to answer your question, yes. Just not jars, but it's the same thing. On this next break, I'll have to get just like one. I might have to pull out some black just because I need to go just a touch darker, and can't seem to do that for her hair.
Calvin asks, how do you decide how to bright or darken to key a painting? How do you decide how bright or dark to key a painting?
Well, I think that's a fantastic question for Alex, because he does such a great job keying value ranges in his paintings. He compresses areas and expands areas so well.
Well, it's funny because I just kind of feel like I'm painting what I'm seeing. But I happen to kind of Yeah, I don't. Maybe it's in like the compression of certain things that makes it seem keyed a certain way, but sometimes I think I tend to start a bit brighter, and that's because I like to kind of paint darker paint on top of light paint, and sometimes you're just working in that and it ends up looking good and you don't want to change it, so your painting kind of ends up being keyed a bit lighter. And then also, it's sometimes the way that I key a painting really is that I'll just find like my darkest dark and then kind of like punch that in, and then I'll try and kind of work value-wise from there. Find my darkest dark and like my lightest light, and kind of place those in, and then everything exists in between. And if you wanted to key a painting lighter, which I guess the question would be, how do you choose if you want to do that? And really, it's just, if you have like the aesthetic eye to have that kind of insight before you start, to be like, I think this image will look just more beautiful if it's keyed brighter, and I, you know, make all the shadows slightly brighter than I actually see them, then that's awesome. But sometimes that's not so easy. You just kind of go for what you're seeing. But I don't know if that really answers the question, but yeah.
I don't know if I can add anything better than that.
So Vaporwave says, which part of the face do you start with first? Is it the same every time, or does it depend?
Well, in these situations, it most certainly depends, because I'm experimenting the whole time when I'm working on one of these paintings. But I would say in general, I personally start often on like an eye and then go in and over the forehead. And the reason I do that is because it helps kind of go into the question before. It helps key my value range of what I want the painting's range to be. So, and the forehead is like the most spherical part that's going to have your sort of lightest, typically your lightest light, and almost all the way to shadow. So it helps you sort of establish what the form of your painting is going to be like.
Miguel Martinez says, hi guys, love your content. Alex, I loved your previous solo show at Arcadia. Can't wait to see your next show. Question, what is your most eye-opening moment in your art career? Thanks.
Well, first off, thank you for all that. That's awesome. My most eye-opening thing in my art career. Man. I really don't know the answer to that question. There's just, it's kind of like trying to capture little eye-opening moments like throughout the whole journey that just keeps getting you one little tick further. But I don't know if there's just one. I can't even think of it. Because most of the things I think of are like technical. And because with like an art career, I didn't really try very hard to make an art career. I was just focused on just try to make the best work, and if it's good enough, people will want it. I don't know. I think that works.
All right, that sounds like it's break time.
Yeah.
and we will be back, everyone.
There's
So the leaf blower finally kicked in. I was wondering when it was going to happen. So it'll be a little loud for a little bit, ladies and gentlemen, but if I talk, maybe the mic will just overpower it. But I think it'd be more and more annoying for me to sing a song, so, you know.
You should try it.
I don't know, Alex, you want to sing It's a Small World After All?
What?
So, you never know what craziness is going to happen at East Oaks. So Jessica's got...
So, we have a question from DB. Do you paint this slow? And he wasn't being fresh by asking. I seriously wonder if they paint this slow. I do watercolor and paint fast.
Well, the answer is we usually paint even slower than this.
Yeah, that's true.
So yes, very slow.
Yep, I would agree. We are very slow painters. Yeah, watercolor is such a timed thing, especially if you paint more of in a wash format, which I'm sure they do. Because you can paint slow in watercolor, but you're disregarding one of the properties of watercolor if you do it that way. Because then you can, you know, a lot of people can like really push the way watercolor dries as part of the properties of the paint. So, so yeah, no, we're much slower than a watercolor format. One of the beauties of oil is just the opposite of this property, where you can actually, it dries much slower, so you get to use that to your advantage to create things. Easier to blend that way.
We have a question from Milieu. You often talk about the concept of compression when talking about values in these sessions. Can you perhaps expand on what you mean by that? Thanks for the great stream.
That's a really great question, and one I keep forgetting that people don't know, and I didn't know it until I was studying. So I'm really glad you brought it up. Compression is basically saying that you might have an incredibly large range. So say that you have a range from black to white in value. What compression, when we say compressing something, is that when you're looking at it, you might actually see something as black as, you know, the black and as white as the white. But say that it's really off in the distance, you want to create atmosphere. So it really is never going to have a blackest black and a whitest white, because you want to bring things forward that are in the foreground. And so things in the foreground need to have a larger range of value so that they seem closer. So what you need to do is what they call compression, which is you make a much lighter value your black, and then you only use a small range of value to go from dark to light, and you stay within that range and you don't get any darker or any lighter, and that helps create sort of a limited thing in a painting that might be able to push it back, or it might actually be able to relate a solid to everything that's within that solid. And so there's a couple of ways that you can use it to your advantage, and those are the things that we're talking about when we're saying, oh, and you can compress here or do that there. But the idea is that you can limit your value range, or you can limit your color range, like your chroma range. So that's basically what we mean. And sometimes it can feel more complicated when we're talking, and hopefully that's a clarifying answer for you. Alex, is there anything you could add to it to sound more clear?
I guess a simple, I mean, that was good. I thought of, like, if you think of a value range, like you can think of the swatches, like literally 1 through 10. If you think of like 1 through 10 value range, think something compressed if you went from like 5 to 8. Like just those 5, like from value 5 to value 8, and you did a whole painting within that value range. That would be you compressing it to a certain value range. Or you did 5 to 10, and you didn't allow yourself to like go as dark or whatever.
So a good example is if you're looking at my painting right now. Her face, her eyes are quite dark. However, her hair overall is much darker than anything on her face except maybe her eyes. So what I've done is right now at least compressed all of the values from light to dark on her face so that I make sure I have enough range from dark to light in the hair to be a overall darker thing in the painting. So this would be an example of where I'm using a darker range for the hair and a lighter range for the face, and I kind of keep those slightly separate over the whole thing in order for it to have context to each other.
Okay, so Vaporwave also asks, do you have any tips on doing the last layer? Any advice on blending it flat and smooth? He's watching this stream and he feels as if his paint must be too thick or not diluted enough.
It's interesting. I mean, your paint might be too thick. I'm trying to think. Because that is a really good thing. I do think that some people paint. It's either a lot of people paint too thin or too thick. And then sometimes when you paint too thick, getting all of that subtlety at the end that you want becomes quite harder because you're just working all of this thick paint, and especially if you're not letting it dry all the way and it's thick and like gunked up in there. But one thing definitely with the last layer is making sure your painting is completely dry. And then you're just kind of working with slightly less paint. You're working with, let's say I like kind of blocked in an eye and now I want to go into it and put in like a final layer and turn little forms and stuff. I'm going to be like remixing a lot of the colors that are already there so I can kind of paint into them. Yeah, but I'm not sure exactly how to answer that question. It's kind of just like, the way I think about it is, or the way I work is kind of like big shapes to small shapes. So it's like you're working big and broad, and then eventually you kind of work your way down to where you just get like smaller and smaller, and your hatch work until it kind of like clicks together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that because it's a next layer that you shouldn't be like repainting some of, like kind of repainting some of the stuff and
redrawing in a way.
Yeah, and you definitely have to like remix some of your areas so that you can blend into them, but you're just not doing it so opaquely that the layer underneath becomes obsolete. But so that just a bit of it shows through.
Yeah. And it's funny because like these are all great rules, because what you want to learn first is like sort of the easiest pathway of like between thick and thin. But, you know, some people start off too thin, some people start off too thick, and what we mean by that is that there are easier ways to do it. And however, there are most certainly artists out there that paint incredibly thin and make beautiful paintings. And there's artists out there that can control incredible thick. We just recently had Scott Burdick here, and do yourself a favor and look him up, because he actually creates these gorgeous paintings, and I mean, he just piles paint onto his painting. I don't know if I've ever quite seen anyone else do it quite like he does. And he's gotten to a point where he just understands exactly what he wants and how to do it. But he's you know, spent a long time training himself to paint that way. Yeah. And it's not the easiest way to do it, but it most certainly has a beautiful outcome, and you'll always know a Scott Burdick painting when you see it. So he has a video with E. Stokes that we just filmed and produced, talking about translating the photo into a fine art painting. But he also has other things as well that you can see online. So I would highly encourage you to go check him out. Layer, none other than I've seen.
So, a few questions from VHawk12. This is Jeff from Chicago. First, he wanted to let Alex know that he is my biggest influence at the moment. And a question for both Lewis and Alex. Do you have a painting that you've sold that you wish you had back?
Alex has sold a painting that I wish I had back. The first one of Divya that I was like, Alex is like on a whole new level, and I've told him this 1,000 times that I wish I had bought that painting.
Yeah, it's called Haunting. It was the one I had in like Portrait Society.
And I knew right away after he painted that that he was on an incredible path, and so I wanted in, but you know, I probably wasn't in the financial state to be able to afford it at the moment for what it was worth. But I will say that is most certainly one I've desired of his. My work personally, Alex could do a better job of answering this, but I'll let him have an opportunity to paint for half a second. My work typically is commission based. And so there have been, I typically don't want to have them back because they're of someone's family member, and doesn't have, that part of my artwork doesn't have much significance to me. However, there are a few that I've painted that I don't know if I'll ever sell. I did one of Divya live from life for a live stream or a tutorial, and when I did it, I was so happy with it. I was like, you know, I think this one's a milestone painting, and there's a few milestone works of art that I've created that I don't know if I'll ever sell. So, Alex, what about you, buddy? I know that you and I have had this conversation before, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, no, I don't really want him back. I mean, there are some that I like better than others, obviously, but you know, I'm kind of glad they're all gone. I think it's just different with your own work. But there's definitely paintings of mine that I think, like, there's one self-portrait that I did that Divya won't let me sell. So there's some stuff that we're not allowed to sell. It's like some of the stuff that I did when I was at Odd Nerdrums. If I did sell that, I probably would have wanted it back, but I didn't let myself sell it because it just has that sentimental value to it.
All right, so we have a question that I actually want to know the answer to. They say, I really like how transparent scumbles look on white. Is there any way to get that look back after you've gone and have done it and painted it to opaque?
Well, I'm assuming that what you mean by scumble, transparent scumbles on white, would be what I call as a definition of glaze. But some people call it a scumble too. So just, it's just a semantics thing there for sure. But if I'm understanding correctly, it's where you're painting over dry white or maybe some sort of dry grisaille, and you're scumbling or glazing over a color so that it kind of gets in the grooves. Is that how you're understanding what they're saying?
I think it's kind of like this. See how I scumbled it on
Gotcha.
glowing underneath.
Gotcha. Well, in that case, you gotta paint over it. Let it dry and start over is what I would do.
Yeah, you pretty much can't get it back unless you paint basically white paint back over it, or really light paint back over it. Because when you try and scumble a light over a dark, that's when stuff starts looking weird and chalky. So that's, a lot of my work, and especially like my work in my last show and stuff, had a lot of that kind of stuff in it. And I actually have started to caring about it less, because you do have to be so controlled, because you have to get it right. And if you don't get it right, you lose that technique. So I've tried to stop caring about it so much, because there's so many beautiful paintings that I like that do not have it at all. And I'm like, well, if they don't have that, it's not like the magic trick or something.
That's a break from model on that.
Okay.
That's break?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
So I've been using this transparent base fast drying alkyd, and it literally dries within minutes. You can't hear it.
Make sure you have it on mute.
I can't hear you.
I know what's going on. Click your headphones on the far.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're good. All right, Alex, you were heard. Go ahead and say it again. Finish that thought.
So, basically I've been using this transparent base fast drying alkyd medium, and it dries like super fast. Within the session it's dry, but it's super thick, like thicker than my paint, so it's a bit hard to work with, but it's interesting.
So, Vaporwave says, have you heard that at the end of a painting, some painters would mix all the leftover paint on the palette and use it on the background?
I've heard it. I've heard people mixing all the colors together, and then basically it's like a perfect harmony color because it's all of the colors that they've used. But
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard of that before, honestly, but I love that idea if you want to, like, if you have like a darker or neutral background. It might be interesting to see what comes out for sure.
Yeah.
Vaporwave, if you're working on this painting, do that to your background and post it to our Instagram or tag us on the Instagram and say what you did. Jessica's got some really awesome colors in her hair. I feel like this just goes like from these beautiful cool reds to oranges to yellows. Bit of green in there. Not that you dyed your hair green, saying that it has like colors of.
No, I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
See, look at
it's in
that.
there.
Look at that. See? I thought I was just like having a sharp eye, seeing like cool mixed with something else, and no, it's just that it had green in it. So what do we have, like 4 more sessions left? 3 more sessions? So it's 7:50. We have 27 sessions left. She said she would model for all 27. I hope you're okay with me volunteering you for that. That cool, Jessica?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I'd just get some of this in before I kept going, because then I can like balance the colors in the face better in context.
B. Jerry says, Alex, are you painting dark to light or mostly just large shapes to small shapes? Is that why you paint the hair first? Thanks.
Yeah, it's definitely not exactly dark to light. Although I did punch in like my darkest darks, and then when I squint at her face is pretty much a light shape, and then her hair is a dark shape, especially from my angle because the shadow side is quite small. So that was also me blocking that in. And like Lewis was saying, once I kind of had that hair in, it could help me figure out the color in the skin better. But I'm kind of just like patchworking it. I punched in some of my darkest darks, but then I went to some of my brightest brights right after that. I wasn't like going just like incrementally lighter and lighter. Just kind of going for it.
Vaporwave wants to know where you guys buy your paint.
Well, I buy my paint from Natural Pigments, and which is called Rublev paint. It's the same company, but he has its own brand for the actual paint. And then I also buy Old Holland and Michael Harding mostly, but peppered in there is all sorts of experimental. I have a couple of Sennelier paints that I really like, and I'm always experimenting with new things. So to see if I like them, I'll try a Cobalt Violet from multiple places, you know, to see which brand seems to work best for my tendencies and that kind of thing.
Yeah, where do I buy my paint? Well, yeah, a lot of my colors are natural pigments, and then so their website, and then Jerry's Artorama is a store around here, but also just mainly, I find myself ordering off of like jerrysartorama.com or dickblick.com for my paints.
Calvin asks, how long does it normally take for you to get a good likeness? And do you have any advice on how to attain the likeness faster?
Well, gosh, that really depends on a lot of things. Depends on if I'm drawing with pencil and paper or if I'm painting. It depends on how the size of the portrait. So, like I said before, like any good attorney, I answer with it depends. But I think that for me to get a really good likeness, like super solid, I mean, it could take with drawing, it could take 4 or 5 hours, and you can get close. You can get a likeness like where it really favors them, but if you want to say like a solid something, I mean, it could 4 or 5 hours, or if you're off, it could take 2 or 3 days. I've had it both, but the more you can focus on the bigger shapes and then go into the smaller shapes like Alex was saying earlier, the better off you'll be of being more accurate, quicker. So hopefully that helps. Yeah.
Vaporwave says, getting a likeness is something that always worries me, especially as I can't seem to get a good last layer. So what they have painted now is what I end up with.
Yeah, I would say take as much time as you need in the drawing stage to get it right, because it will save your butt as you get further down the line. I mean, it's just so common to see how, I mean, I've done it so many times, countless times, but where you didn't spend enough time on it because you were ready to move on to other things because you grew tired of trying. And then like you think that you'll figure it out near the next stage or the next stage, and then you find yourself getting all the way to the end and it's still not done, and you're like, oh. So yeah, I think definitely something to that.
Mustafa Mahmood says, do you use raw and burnt umber in the last layers of a painting regarding their fast drying time?
That's a good question. I use raw and burnt umber throughout the entirety of my painting, for sure. So,
Yep.
and I love the fast drying nature of it because there's so many times where you're ready to put on the next layer, and it matters that it has the right paints in it to make it dry quicker.
And same here. I pretty much use all my colors throughout the whole process, but if I'm using lead and titanium, you usually don't want to put lead on top of titanium. That's the only kind of one I think about. But even if you did, you'd probably be fine.
We have an interesting conversation going on in the comments. Vaporwave says, why is it that paintings always look good from afar but never close up? Sandra Bim replied, Rembrandt said, paintings are made to see, not to smell. So yeah, you must see a painting from a distance to be able to see the whole picture.
Ooh, this is a great conversation. I believe that some of the greatest paintings are paintings. It's funny that she said that quote, but with, are meant to be seen, not to smell. Because what do we do as artists? The one thing we want to do is like get up close and see how they made their marks. And boy, there's some real beauty in the mark making that some people have in their artwork. And we want to kind of like get into the nitty-gritty to see what it looks like. But an analogy I often use is a perfume analogy. So the fact that she's using that as like the quote is really interesting. But the perfumers out there actually, they have, the way they create perfume is it has a set of 4 notes in a series of 3 within each perfume. There's a set of high notes, there are 4, set of 4 middle notes, and a set of 4 bass notes. And in those sets, you kind of create their own chord that makes like a beautiful combination of flavors. And that's how perfume is made. And they all have to harmonize together. And the way I see the art, the visual art, is very similar. A great painting has high notes, mid notes, and bass notes. And the high notes, which in perfuming are citrus notes, and they're other sharp notes. And what they're designed to do is to catch your nose. Like when that initial smell, they want you to notice it. So that they're there to turn your head. The mid notes are the body of the perfume, where it is the structure. And it is once you've kind of it's caught your attention, the mid notes are what make you want to breathe in and understand the identity of the perfume. And then the bass notes are the notes that are so subtle, but they linger. So you can't smell them necessarily when you breathe in, but it's kind of like the aftertaste. They linger on, and they give you a longing for wanting more, and they also give the perfume a sense of mystery. And I believe painting is very, very similar. Your high notes are high contrast. They are value, and they are large shapes. And so they're the thing that when you're really far away, catch your eye and turn your head to want to look at it more. It also could be like high chroma combinations to low chroma combinations. And then the mid notes is the body of the painting. It's also the narrative of the painting, or the concept of the painting. What is the work of art saying? What is the composition of the painting? And that makes you want to step in closer because you want to get that answered. And then the bass notes are the subtlety. It's the mark making. It is the glazing techniques. It is all these small nuances that happen in a painting that you're not necessarily aware of, and they leave sort of a sense of mystery, and it makes you want to come back and look at it from more, and they keep drawing you back to it. So I believe that the best paintings are successful really far back, in the midway, and up close. Definitions of a masterpiece.
We have 2 comments to that. Mustafa says, "Oh, I'm a perfume geek. Glad to hear this from Lewis. Interesting." And Sanderbin replied, "Yes, that is the thing. As artists, we come close to the painting to see the brushwork, the highlights, but the full result can only be seen from a distance."
It's true. And that really plays into how our eye is designed, right? You know, because our point of reference of what's in focus and our peripheral, what's in focus is very narrow, and we have to like step back all the way in order to be able to get a good understanding. Great question. Got some rock star questions coming in here.
Vaporwave says, "Having beards yourselves, how do you paint beards?"
Hey, take it away, Alex.
It's shapes of color in the right spot. It's like you paint a beard the same way you paint anything else. But I guess the fact that it's a lot of tiny little hairs is what makes it challenging, and I would say simplify it, like squint at it to just see like kind of big shapes of color instead of a bunch of little hairs.
Absolutely. I think I was showing Kristen last week a painting of Shishkin that Kramskoy painted. And it just is an incredible portrait. And it's so detailed, but then you go and you look at his beard, which is this like really scraggly beard that's like really long. And if you look up close, you'll notice that most of it is just incredibly soft mark making, but it's just the right value in the right spot. And he does such a great job of making like all of this look super soft, but then he puts like a few little squiggles here and there that are fine sort of needlepoint squiggles, and it makes the whole painting look like it's got every hair painted. So absolutely, I think it's a game of actual subtlety and softness, and then just a few tiny accents. All right, everybody, we'll be back in just a second. Speaking of stepping back,
We have a question from Edsel. Do you use a different method of painting on your studio work and live painting, or just the same?
Yes, I do a different method. This is more alla prima, and in my studio work, I most certainly paint in layers. So I'm thinking from the beginning layer to the end layer all at once, but I'm also thinking of like how this might react to that, and trying to use like thick and thin through my work as well. So to answer that question, basically yes, because like this is like a direct painting situation. And they're just different. There's no wrong way. It's just a different it's just a different sport in a way. You know, it'd be the difference between baseball and football. You know, you both are playing on a field and both have a ball, but you know the rules and properties of the game are different.
And yeah, same for me. I'm usually a lot kind of slower and careful and controlled. And yeah, it just kind of takes longer. But I would like to eventually be like efficient enough to kind of attack a canvas more so like this and kind of build it up that way.
Vaporwave says, do you prefer doing self-portraits from a photo or in a mirror? Is one easier than the other?
For self-portraits, what was the first one?
Do you prefer doing self-portraits from a photo or in a mirror? Is one easier than the other?
I would say that I paint from life whenever it's possible. So like one of the main reasons that you wouldn't paint from life is because you can't afford to have a model there that long and so on. But with yourself, you're always there. So I think with like self-portraits and still lifes, personally, I think it doesn't make much sense to me to do them from photographs. Unless your studio just does not have the lighting or anything, or the right equipment or whatever.
The next
So,
question
yeah.
is from Sarah Brown. Hi, your paintings are looking beautiful. Do you have a design process when working out composition for a larger complex work?
Well, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah. The question was, do we have a particular way that we work out our compositions of our studio work?
Yeah, of your complex
Larger.
works. A design process.
A design process. That's a better question for you, Alex.
It's not a process. I mean, if I'm thinking about a large painting, I have ideas, like both like written down and kind of sketched out, and then like, what do I do? I mean, yeah, I just kind of like sketch out my idea, think about it, look up kind of reference images to get an idea, and I'll, kind of doctor together multiple like references to try and figure out the best composition, but there's no specific process, and that would also be the same for smaller work as well. But I'm sure there probably is a better process out there that I would love to learn, because I really am interested in learning more about composition and learning it more like almost like an illustrator, because they just have so much command and freedom over their compositions, where we kind of just like learn to paint what we see, and we don't really, not many, well, actually I don't know, I wouldn't say there's not many places teaching it, but the ateliers and stuff, doesn't seem much emphasis on building a idea of a composition from scratch. Maybe, I don't know.
For me, yet again, I'm more of a commission-based painter. And I would say for me, I definitely have ideas in mind when I'm setting a pose. But I honestly, one of the things I'll do is I'll take photos to see how they look. Often it'll be like in a small house or something, and it's hard to like step back and see what it looks like. And so if you take photos and then you like can minimize them on your computer, you can see more of like what it's going to look like as a composition. And when you do that, then that makes the process a little bit easier. And then I usually will set the pose, and then the next day we'll go in and start painting from life. And that's if I'm doing a Head and Shoulders painting. I do a decent amount. If they're full body works, then I'll use photographs, because especially for children, it's just way too difficult to get them to sit still for a full body. So I'll usually do a combination of multiple photos, but most of my compositional styles of working with things is just reactionary. I'll see something I like in one painting, one photo, and I just like take a monstrous amount of photos, and I'll see another gesture and another one, and I'll continue to combine those two to come up with something.
Question from Natalie, the artist. Has the pandemic affected your artistic spirit? Mine has been dampened a bit. What do you do to overcome any of this?
That's a great question. The answer for us has, been that, what I think, I'm an extreme extrovert, and, the pandemic most certainly has affected me because I love being around people. And I certainly don't feel like I've had the opportunity to be around people the way I enjoy being around them. But the other part of that question is that the sheer design of East Oaks is that we always are pouring into the next generation of artists, and we work as a community of artists. And so Alex and Divya are our housemates. They live there's an apartment in the bottom floor of the house, and Parisa and I live in the top floor, and then Kristen is a artist in resident, and they have been living temporarily here, and they have their own space. And so we actually had a built-in community during the pandemic, and that has been a godsend. It's been incredible. So the long answer is that we were fortunate that we had fellow artists that we could paint with. The short answer of that also is that I still miss, the conferences and the workshops and seeing artists all over the country and spending time with them.
Vaporwave says, what's the longest time you have gone without painting?
Ooh.
It's usually when it's like I go on a trip or something. I'm trying to think, like when we went to Australia, it was a little while till we painted, but then we started up kind of a nice routine again. A couple of weeks maybe.
Well, I own another company that I was very involved with, but it was seasonal. So what I would do is that company would bring in a certain amount of income during the fall/winter season. And then the rest of the year I was able to paint, and it actually helped me at the beginning stages of my painting career because it financially kept me stable while I was painting and trying to build my art career. And because of that, there would be about 3 months that I couldn't pick up a brush because the other business just demanded so much of my time. So yeah.
Just going back to Natalie's question about the pandemic, she said, what would you do to overcome any of a dampened artistic spirit?
So, yeah, and I apologize if I didn't answer that part of it. You know, I think first of all, you've got to know what makes you thrive, and that's different for everybody. So me answering this question, I can only answer for what I know to be true for me, but I can give you advice depending on what it is that's dampening it. Well, you know, if the pandemic has dampened your artistic side because you're not able to see people, then I would highly recommend you finding just a small group of artists of like 1 or 2 that you feel that you can paint with that have similar vision that you have. If it's just because of the lack of hope of humanity and how people are reacting to the pandemic, I know a lot of artists that would use that to actually create. I wish I knew a little bit about how it has been frustrating for you, because it could be more helpful to know kind of like what I would do, at least in that scenario. But we're all such different beings in this world. It's hard to be able to give too much thoughts, because I'm not seeing the world through the lens of your particular biography.
So Vicky Gabba says, Lewis, when you are not painting portrait commissions, what subjects do you enjoy painting?
Oh, well, I love doing figurative work. That's by far my favorite. So portrait commissions is the perfect overlap for me, because it allows for me to do figurative work while still living a stable lifestyle. However, if you're not careful, it's like a runaway train. It can run away with you, and then you find yourself being so consumed by it that you don't have time for the work you love to do. So I love doing, it wouldn't be too far from what Alex does. It would be a slightly different theme and different look, but it's the idea of creating poetry through figurative art. So
Mustafa says, does working on a small canvas help you work faster for a sketch, or not, because you need to put tiny marks with tiny brushes and focus more?
I'd say it probably helps me, because you cover more surface area quicker.
It's helpful in the sense that you most certainly cover more surface area, but it also forces you to be very abbreviated and to like really pay attention to your mark making. It also helps because the ratio of what you see to what you're painting is not too far off from each other. So because of that, it makes it easier as well.
Sam McLemore says, even after years of practicing painting and developing skills, do you ever feel like a fake?
Oh man, I think everyone suffers from imposter syndrome. You know, this idea that you are living some sort of lie. And I don't think that ever goes away, no matter who you are, what profession you have. You know, people always fear that like they'll be secretly found out that they're not that great or something, you know, and I think it's very common. So you have to rise above that and realize that there's a lot of people that wish to learn from you, and there is something that you have to offer. And I think everyone has something to offer if they dig deep enough to find it. Most of us just are like, oh, well, no one would care to know that. They already know that or something, because we live in ourselves. And so yeah, I think that we all have to combat that, you know. Alex, you have something to say about that?
I don't know. It's hard for me to understand, because it's like, so if you think you're a fake, that would mean that you would assume that you've already arrived at what you're going for, or is it the fact that people think that you've arrived?
Well, yeah, I can read the question out again if you want.
No, I think, I mean, sure, if it clarifies that better, but I don't think it does. Just to stop feeling like you're a fake. It's like, well, don't I have to feel like I'm great first to think people are going to think I'm a fake? I don't know.
Somebody might have to think you're great.
Yeah.
But you most certainly don't have to think you're great to feel like a fake. I think some people think that they feel like they're fake because they have a desire to. I mean, for me at least, it's like you have a desire to be able to share something and a heart to share something, but sometimes you don't feel like you're adequate enough or ready enough. Or say you wanted to like be in a gallery and you're like, my work's got to get better. So you never approach the gallery, you know, when your work is probably just as good as anybody's work that's in there, you know. So I think that at least my takeaway from that is that's what I think about when I think somebody is struggling with the idea of feeling fake.
I see.
I could be wrong on that, by the way, you know, just that is. That's the side of me that's being a fake. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, what do you know?
Sander Bim says, love the different interpretations in your paintings. One looks cooler and the other looks hotter. Anyway, have a good night and good practice to everyone watching.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that is model right.
Okay.
Ed Sandor said, is that Alex or Nebula? Man, I saw your post on Instagram. You will be having a one-man show. How I wish I can see your works personally. Philippines is far from your location.
That's awesome. I wish you could see it too. Philippines, that's so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for joining.
Artifact says, who are some other artists that you maybe haven't met and would like to invite to East Oak Studio?
Oh man, there's so many. But we were talking about Brad Kunkel earlier. It would be cool. We thought about, since he's North Carolinian now, that we'd invite him over and see if there's any way he would like to interview or hang out, or maybe film something, paint something. So he's certainly one of them. But there's so many out there that we love, that we'd enjoy collaborating with, that we'll see. I mean, Grace DeVito is coming to town. Donald Journey is coming to town. We're going to be, I've already filmed Mackenzie Swenson and Lynn Clark and Charlie Musto, and they're all amazing painters and sculptors. So they're people that that are definitely going to be doing some stuff with us. So, and there's yet to come. There are people that we're talking to right now, and so yeah, it really comes down to stay tuned, watch our posts, and we'll keep you informed. You're right here. Pull back.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
So Harriet House says, Lewis, I enjoy your essentials of plein air seascape. Your studies are done in oil. Any comments on watercolor and gouache for studies?
Well, I mean, they're fantastic mediums for doing seascapes. I honestly had not done, I want to explore doing more on gouache, but oil, and I used to do watercolor when I was younger and in college. I did a lot more of it, but I haven't done a whole lot, but it's a fantastic medium for water, just because of the nature of it. You know, Winslow Homer's one of my favorite painters, and I love his watercolors. I mean, he was just so masterful with both his watercolors and paint, but you know, and he was so good at water, painting water as it was. But if there's somebody I would recommend looking at, it would be him. And William Tross Richards was just an insane watercolorist and oil painter. There's a book you can get of William Tross Richards that of what he would do is he had a patron who sent him off, and he would go to like England and Scotland, and you know, he was based out of Pennsylvania, but he would go to like England and Scotland, and he would do these like little like 3-inch by 2-inch or 4-inch by 2-inch watercolor landscapes and seascapes, and he would do a whole lot of them, and they're all the exact same size. And then he would ship them off back to the US for his patron to tell him which ones he wanted painted larger. And then once he informed him that he would send it back, which seems like a really long way to doing things. I mean, that means you'd have to literally take it by boat, you know, back over, of which ones he loved and would want into a larger painting. And so then he would go back to that scene and paint it, you know. And there are these beautiful little gems. I think there's a museum that has a whole collection of them in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure, I can't remember which one it is, but it's in Philadelphia, I believe. And they're awesome because the paintings ended up being oil, but all the studies were watercolor. So if you want to learn more about watercolor, I would check out William Tross Richards and Winslow Homer. They're both incredible.
Glass Onion says, I'm so thankful for folks like you that overcome any imposter syndrome you might feel to share with us. Your generous spirits are appreciated so much.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome.
I tell you, an artist journey is not for the faint at heart. You know, it has its battles. Any creative, I think, goes through hardships, and so it's great for people to, like, you know, get on board and tell other people, hey, you're not alone. We've all been there and had tough times. So I appreciate people's honesty, and I want to be honest as well. If there's something that I have truly gone through or know someone who has, or that look, this is part of the reality. It's not easy. It's hard, but we do it because we not only are passionate about it, but we think that it's worth our time, and there's a bit of therapy in it, honestly. So.
Bass says, doing a master copy as I watch along right now. I couldn't help but notice the striking resemblance of Alex with Sergeant's Dr. Posey at
Dr. Posey.
I just looked at the painting. I think maybe you look like this painting.
Is it the dude in the red robe?
Oh, nice. I love that painting.
Well, my
Maybe.
painting definitely doesn't.
Let's just
look
put
like
you in
that,
a red
so-
robe next time. Okay, so next painting from life. Everybody chime in that they want to see Alex in like a long red robe for the next painting from life.
No.
You're like,
No, whoever wants to pay for a nice big red robe, I'll put it on.
Hey, send Red Robe. We'll give you East Oak Studios address. DM us, show us that you're going to send it, and we will give you our address and ship away. And Alex will wear it for the next live stream.
Yep.
You have to wear some night armor.
Nope, they have to. They'll let. It's a democratic system. Let the audience decide.
Vaporwave says, what is the smallest portrait you've done and the biggest?
What's yours, Alexico?
Well, portrait. If the question is portrait, it's different. But biggest painting I've done, it's probably only really around like 50 inches tall. Oh, actually, when I was a lot worse, I did some big stuff. That was like maybe 72 inches or something. But if we're talking about like portrait, literally like the size of the portrait, I only like do life size and under. So like life size.
I did a life size not too long ago of a boy, and it was, with the frame, it was 6 feet tall. The boy wasn't 6 feet tall, the whole painting. That'd be a big boy.
Big boy.
But yeah, it was a life size of a little boy holding like a stick, and it was quite a large painting. But I think that's probably the largest portrait I've ever done. The largest painting I've ever done was 9 feet tall, and I think it was 11 feet wide. I think I might have been 22, 23 when I did that painting.
It was a masterpiece, wasn't it?
Oh man, far from. But they loved it, so.
Oh, it was a commission.
Yeah, it was a modern art commission, and it funded my tailgate business. It literally was like my loan to start that business. So.
Boss says, "Oh, red robe incoming."
I'm so excited about this.
I'm glad you guys said it at the same time.
This is going to be great. And all in good fun, I'll wear something too. Somebody tell me what to wear. Well, within reason.
Some armor, night armor.
All right.
I want to wear the knight.
Alex is like, why can't I be the knight? As long as I'm not a court gesture, I'm good.
You seem to make them laugh.
I always feel like I'm racing the clock to actually get anything else in because I'm like trying to finish out the portrait.
We have 10 minutes on the clock. Vaporwave says, I've always painted with 5x7 panels but have recently moved to A4. A very daunting move, might I add. What size do you prefer?
So A4 div isn't that like 11 by 14 or something?
Yeah, that's like a piece of paper size.
Oh, like 8.5 by 11.
It's the size of a computer piece of paper.
So he said, ask what's a good size?
Yeah, he said that's the size he's working with, I think. And what size do you prefer?
I don't know. I mean, it really depends how much of the figures on it, all that. But for just a portrait, I like 11 by 14, like 12 by 16, 16 by 20. I don't know. Those are all like nice sizes.
Kevin Mueller Cisneros says, "Hey Lewis."
Hello, Kevin. Man, it's been a long time, buddy. Glad to know that you're hanging out with the East Oaks crowd right now. Kevin is an incredible painter. He was a classmate of mine back at GCA. And he's super talented. I believe he's one of the instructors there now, or at least was for a period. So y'all got to check out his work. If y'all get a chance on his Instagram, his website. But he's an awesome guy. Thanks for shouting out, Kevin. It's good to hear from you, buddy.
Vaporwave says, I was always told to keep every painting when I was learning, even the failed ones, so I could look back at them and see how far I had come. Did any of you keep any old failed paintings?
Well, all the old failed ones don't sell, so my mom's got all those.
They're all hanging on her refrigerator.
Yep, she's got a really big refrigerator.
Well, I always tell people I'm a recovering hoarder. So I'm one that kind of keeps everything until I need to throw it away. But every time I move, I force myself to throw something away because I'm like, I I just can't keep hauling it from place to place. So I most certainly have thrown some things away, but I have a lot of old work, some that I'm, can reminisce on, and I love the idea of being able to see your progress. Divya and all of us were talking about this in the past, a while back, where it's so great to be able to see your progress. Because there's times where you're having such a hard time, with what you're working on, that it's you want to be able to look back and see sometimes your progress. It's kind of like you're trying to lose weight or something, having a log, just because it's just such a slow process of growing. Sometimes it's really helpful to visualize it.
Kevin Mueller says, "Looking good, man. Thanks for the shout out."
Thanks, buddy. You could probably run circles around me.
Emmanuel says, "I painted the second largest canvas in Ireland, I am told."
Oh.
Damn. That must be a big...
That is a big canvas.
I'm guessing.
Here, those Ireland people have big canvases too, so that's saying something. That's awesome.
Mustafa says, "It's 3 a.m. in Egypt, but watching you both working, it is a treat."
Well, Mustafa, you're always awesome, and we always appreciate you joining.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Howard Lyon says, "Who is your favorite artist from the past that you think most people might not know about?"
Great question. Alex, you want to take that?
I'm trying to think. I don't even know.
Because, it also depends, and Howard, you know this. It's like there's a lot of people out there that don't know some of the, you could ask any normal person, maybe even people I went to school with in college that are in the art department that'll not even know who William Bouguereau is, And yet in our world, that's, Sargent and Bouguereau are super known, and yet they have no clue who that is. So in a way, I don't know. Because as far as if I were to say about other artists, then I could dig some around that I love an image that I've seen. But off the top of my head, I'm always so bad with names. I'm usually oh, I don't think I've ever heard of that artist. And then somebody will show me a painting. I'm like, oh, I love that painting. That's been one of my favorite paintings. So, so I'm not sure I can answer that. I was on a George Clawson kick lately, looking at some of his work, because I just love his sensibilities and some of the things he does.
We've got 2 minutes left.
2 minutes. I'm going to see if I can put a few black notes in here.
Vaporwave says, "As some of you know, I'm a tattooist from the UK. I've been painting fruit and flowers for a few years, and I have a lot of respect for oil painters like yourselves. Thank you for the helpful information."
Anyway, we really appreciate you joining, and that's awesome, man. I have a huge respect for tattoo artists. Make sure to put your tag in there for everyone to see, so that they can look at your work on Instagram. So we appreciate you and all the people who's joined us. we're so honored that we can even broadcast to everybody, and that there's technology that allows us to do this, especially during like the pandemic and stuff. It allows for me to feel like, you know, we can really connect to and have a community. So always stay tuned with what East Oaks is doing. We're announcing things weekly almost on different things. We're starting to do a lot more interviews of other artists, and so stay tuned for that. We're really looking forward to some of the great names. If you want to be alerted, you can join our newsletter, and we announce often like the things that are going on, and we'll also have discounts at times and on those kinds of on our newsletter. And also, if you've enjoyed these YouTube videos, if you click the bell and the subscribe button, you'll be alerted the next time we do it as soon as we go live. But as always, we really appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for joining us. And, you know, does anybody have any last thoughts on the text board?
Yeah, there's a few. Emmanuel says, Bugaro is the master of all masters. We need to dig him up and clone him.
Is that it? Was that the timer that I heard?
Yes. And there's just a few comments saying how great the painting is. But yes, that's it.
Awesome.
All right. Well, y'all, thank you so much for joining. We've truly are honored that you would spend your time in your evening seeing what we're working on and participating in the questions. Our ultimate goal is to have this as a place where you can connect with other artists and community. And we appreciate you, Jessica. You've been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. And y'all, until next time, we will be doing these. We already have the next 2 months scheduled out. Kelly and I are working right now on creating a calendar so you can see all the things that we're doing. So until the next time, thank you again for joining us, and we'll talk to y'all soon.